utmost commitment, that's the way it's always been. We rise up to the challenge, we give the game our all. With sheer determination, we go in for the ball. With the crowd thunders, go Cats, we break the banner down.
Hi everybody and welcome to BigFooty Cats podcast, episode 3 for season 2016. My name is Willo, and tonight we are joined by three of our board's top shelf posters to have a look at how we've started the season and to discuss all the big issues. We've got returning after best on ground performance in his debut last time, TurboCat.
G'day guys.
How are you, mate?
I'm fantastic.
Thank you again for being involved. We've got joining us again, he's now become a regular, Catempire.
Greetings. Thanks for having me again.
No worries, mate. Thank you for being here. And we've got a debutant who's joining us, obviously, for the first time, CatStorm.
How you going, everyone?
Thank you for being part of it. And a very big thank you, actually, because CatStorm contacted me. He responded to the call-out and offered his services, so we're very happy to have him part of it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So we're looking at round 3, 2 games down, mixed results. Last time we had a show, we were previewing the Geelong Hawthorn game on Easter Monday, and I don't think we could have been much happier with the result, with the Cats getting away with a 30-point win. We had a bit of a nap in the third quarter, as we seem to do, but pretty much dominant. We're pretty much, I think, safely say the better team for the majority of the game.
We were sort of tossing up whether it was a must-win or not, wasn't it? That's what we were sort of thinking at the time, whether it was if we don't get them now, when are we going to get them?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Nice.
And I sort of thought that, oh, well, even if we don't get them, I think we could be better. But, I think we did pretty well.
What were your resounding thoughts from the game, Turbo?
Well, a bit like what we talking about there. I think that the first and the fourth quarter was probably the best. Third quarter we appeared to go to sleep, although I think the third quarter sort of chimes in a little bit with what happened round 2. We have been tending to waste chances. We're not really clean. We get the opportunities, but waste it. Like Orly at we have 2 or 3 chances, I think, in that third quarter to stop the tide from Hawthorn, and you don't really want to give those guys a run on. But overall, we fought back when they got in front, so definitely a pass.
Yep, absolutely. CatStorm?
Yeah, just going on with the third quarter, I thought a pivotal moment of that third quarter was the Mackie poster running straight through the centre of the ground. He hits that, and I think we've got them stopped. But
well, see, that's another example of exactly what I'm saying about, because like Mackie poster in that game, Bartel in the second, it's sort of, and I bet you they nail them, 8 times out of 10 at training. So it's just a waste of opportunity. But,
definitely.
I think there was a lot of... I think the third quarter, as much as we did let them back into it, and it gave a lot of people who like to bring up the same repeat points the motivation to say we were no good, we drop off after half time, it's all Scott's fault, etc. I watched the game, I think it was this time last week actually, and did a bit of a review, quarter by quarter breakdown of it all, and when I actually watched it properly without the stress of being caught up in the game and the scoreboard, because I couldn't have even told you after the game who was commentating, because I had no idea. I was just into it, just wound up and into the game. But when I actually watched it back, the Hawks took most of their opportunities. They killed us on turnover. When we turned the ball over, they hurt us, but a lot of the turnovers were our own doing. Just missed handballs that you shouldn't miss, missed kicks that you shouldn't miss, and then on top of that, we missed opportunities we should have kicked. Gregson missed a set shot. Mackie missed on the run. Hawke gave away 2 free kicks in about 30 seconds at the start of the quarter. There was a series of little things I noticed where, granted, they were the better team for the quarter, and I'm not disputing that, but I don't think the gap was as big or it was as bad a quarter as it potentially the scoreboard showed. If we'd taken a couple of chances, it would have been a completely different quarter.
That's true.
In my theory.
Although to counterbalance that, I think the efficiency score on our side of it, what were we at half-time at, 11-1?
Yeah.
So that probably distorted it a little bit too. So,
yeah, that's true. It probably balanced itself out.
Well, the clearance numbers in that third quarter, because it just seemed to me that they were breaking out of the centre better than us.
Yeah, spot on, I reckon. I don't know the actual numbers, but my view from it at the ground was that was really what changed in the third quarter. They got numbers around the contests and were doing much better at beating us at the clearances, which we absolutely dominated up to half-time. And I think that's going to reflect our fortunes over the year, and we'll come to the round 2 game shortly. But we're playing a style of game where we want to win the contested ball and win the clearances, and doing that over the course of the game is going to give us the win, hopefully. But when we drop even for a quarter like we did in that third quarter against Hawthorn, good sides are going to be able to fight back and get on top, and that's what we saw, I thought, against Hawthorn.
I did a little bit of a look-see at the centre setup, because we were talking about whether Smith was actually doing as good as what some plaudits were saying that he was. And I think we got really 2 proper clearing chances. I think it was right at the start where Hawkins gave the free kick away, and the other one was where it ended up in Mackie's hands. The rest of the time it ended up going Hawthorn's way, I think.
I think as well, and I remember posting at the time during the game, I think at 3/4 time, saying, was Smith in the middle that quarter? But then when I watched it back again, he was played nowhere near as much in the middle as I thought he was for the whole game anyway. I think the second quarter, Stanley was in the ruck the majority.
That's what I did.
I think Stanley rucked more than Smith did that match.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. So really, some of the stuff that we've been doing well is probably just as much Stanley, if not more than Smith.
I think it was a bit of a horses for courses type situation that game, in that Smith forward was working, he was applying a lot of pressure, and Stanley in the middle wasn't getting. McAvoy had, I would suggest, minimal influence on the game.
And what was the other ruckman, Pitnet? He did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and he was a first game teenager, so he's up against it to start with. But Stanley did well, and Smith was doing well in the forward line, and he got 3 or 4 chase down tackles for a bloke that's 206 centimetres. That's unheard of, basically, for the way he was chasing and the pressure he was creating in the forward line. When I watched it back again, I was surprised at how few centre bounces he actually was in for. Was there what I suppose, Catempire, you mentioned you were at the game Easter Monday. What was it that you took away from the game?
I think, as I said in the podcast prior to the game, what I wanted to see was that we had a different plan for Hawthorn, and then we were able to execute it, because what we'd been doing for the last couple of seasons wasn't working. And that was the most pleasing thing, I think, was that we were able to really get on top in the midfield and dictate how we wanted the game to be played. And in particular, we know how good Hawthorn is at moving the ball by foot, and we just didn't give them that opportunity. We shut down their space, and we pressured the ball carrier to such an extent that they turned it over, and we got opportunities going the other way. So that was really pleasing. There were obviously some good individual performances as well from Smith and a few others. Obviously, the one and only Paddy Dangerfield was pretty unbelievable. To see him in the flesh was just a sight to behold, really. I think every time I see him play, I think, I can't believe how good he is and how lucky we are that we got him. So, yeah, that was just amazing seeing. that firsthand.
Did you see anything, I suppose, different? Did you pick up anything different structurally, or just with the way we set up across the ground from our previous years?
I don't think it was so much structurally. I think that it was a similar setup in terms of where the players positioned themselves on the ground, and the zone that we played was pretty typical of what we've seen in the last few years. I think what happens though and again we'll talk about this in relation to the second game, but when we set up a zone and we don't have that pressure on the ball carrier, teams who have decent foot skills are just able to pick their way through it too easily. But against Hawthorn, we had the pressure right on Song, and we were tackling ferociously and winning the contests, and that meant that they just didn't have the time. So I think it wasn't so much about structure, apart from the obvious few key personnel differences. It was more about how we played and how intense we were at the ball.
Yep, and CatStorm, we've sort of lost. We got halfway through, and then we diverted off from you. What did you take out of our Easter Monday clash?
I think it's going to be a recurring theme, but what I've noticed is if we don't win the ball, we're poor at stopping other teams doing what they want to do with it. So we have to get in there hard and actually get the contested ball, because once they have it, they seem to be able to get through us with fair amount of ease. That's more of something probably I noticed in the second game than the first one. But
it's probably something though that was also shown up, I suppose, in that third quarter to an extent when their midfield did get on top. We obviously did get shown up that bit as well.
I think our pressure game isn't actually that good. That was the difference. I thought we were a bit poor when we don't win the contested ball. We don't get enough pressure. They seem to be able to just work it through.
I think that's right, but I think that's a bit of a general phenomenon about the way footy's played these days. And we've seen in the first couple of rounds when things open up, and perhaps a couple of rule changes have helped in that regard, but when sides are able to move the ball under little pressure, then they're so skilled that they can pinpoint passes, and they're so fast and strong as well that they can move the ball so quickly. We're seeing a lot of high-scoring matches, and Geelong's no different in that regard. I mean, and Hawthorn to that extent as well. We did it to them. You know, when we won the contests and when we turned the ball over, we moved it quickly and we scored heavily against them. No one's immune to it, really. It's the way footy's played now.
Yeah.
If you don't bring the pressure, then you're going to be in all sorts.
Oh, and I think as well, especially with the competition as even as it is, you only have to be off your game by that little bit, and it could be just that you're just not bringing that same intensity and pressure, and you can get opened up and exposed, and you can see a team that shouldn't get beaten, by another team. You can see that result happen. I mean, you look at Essendon and Melbourne on the weekend as probably a key example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we went from 30-point victors over the three-time reigning champs and being on top of the world. It literally was a case of chocolates to boiled lollies in the next week, wasn't it? So after last weekend, the Sunday's game against GWS up in Canberra, where we suffered a 13-point defeat. First quarter, I felt we were probably the better team, and we just wasted chances. Then they were comfortably better, probably for the middle two quarters, and then we gave them a burst late that, for half a moment there looked like we were going to pinch it, but unfortunately it was not to be. I'll start with you, Catempire, as I know you were at the game. What were your thoughts from last weekend?
Yeah, it follows on from the comments about the Hawthorn game, because really all of the good things we saw in that game were largely lacking. In particular, after, I thought, quarter time, when, as you say, I thought we were on top in the first quarter, and I agree with Scott's comments that we were doing all the right things in the first quarter except converting on the scoreboard. Those middle two quarters were just really poor in terms of the pressure we applied. As I was saying, we set up the normal zone we set up, but we just gave GWS too much time and space on the ball, and they picked their way through it. And it's going to be the case that when teams are allowed to do that, our backline's going to be put under pressure and the opposition's going to score. And GWS was able to do that for those middle two quarters. And then in the last quarter, I'm not sure what happened, but we turned it on its head again, and I thought we again showed all the right sort of pressure and skills and turned things around. And, really, we would have been lucky to win it at the end, but I also think we were a little bit unlucky as well, like just a few, Gregson missing that goal that he normally would have gobbled, and a couple of decisions went against us that they weren't I'm not pinning the blame on the umpires, but just a bit of luck going the other way, like that free kick that wasn't paid to Lang in the middle of the ground, and then Dangerfield streaming forward and he got paid for running too far. I actually haven't seen the replay on whether that was a fair enough free kick, but it didn't look like it at the time.
Dermy counted 14 steps, I reckon.
Yeah, it looked harsh to me. But
I don't think it would have actually mattered. What was there, a minute left and we were down by 7 points? It would have taken something extraordinary to get up from there.
Yeah, that's true.
It probably just goes, though, we just had a run of sort of those 50-50 decisions that went against us. Like the Henderson mark, which was just an atrocious decision.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
And especially, I reckon the extra impact of that is it's a new bloke in the team who's trying to find his feet and probably has been low on confidence at his other club, etc. Comes in, takes an absolutely fantastic pack mark in defence, and it doesn't get paid. And then they scored a goal straight from it as well, and it's just what a kick in the guts that was.
Yeah, it was a crook centre bounce too, wasn't there? That sort of went their way, and they got a goal from that.
Lappin sneezed at the umpire, and that was a free kick as well. It wasn't.
So you sort of know when it's going your way and against you, and that's sort of. It wasn't just this is, I suppose, we getting into the area of free kicks, and Chris Scott mentioning the free kicks. I think there's some free kicks you can probably say you can control, but there's some things that if it's not called, like a mark that's normally a mark, it's not called, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do about that. That's not part of the free kick tally, but it's certainly an effect on the game.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good point. But I mean, just a couple other things, and I'll hand it over to the others, but in round one we had Dangerfield had 40 touches. Our other midfielders were prolific as well. They had we had Duncan and Selwood contributing in the middle as well. Against GWS, they had 4 players with more than 25 touches: Green, Scully, Griffin and Shield, all prolific. We didn't have a single player get the ball more than 24 times, and Enright was our leading possession getter. We just didn't win the ball.
Yeah, that's not good.
We just got beaten in the middle. It was that simple. And as I said, we could have pinched it, but we would have been lucky. The other thing where we shot ourselves in the foot was missing opportunities in front of goal. Not just missing by hitting the post and missing easy goals, but we also were too unselfish in a couple of occasions. I think I can remember one where Hawkins passed off to Kirsten. He should have just gone back and kicked the goal.
Another one did the same thing.
Yeah,
another one person did the same thing. So we just didn't help ourselves. With a bit of luck, we could have won, but really it was a disappointing performance.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether it was poor choice to do it or bad execution, because Kirsten was sort of almost standing in the wrong spot to receive the ball. Was the pass bad, or was?
Did he call for it? He was on. I was down that end, and he Kirsten streamed into nearly into the goal square on his own. So it wasn't a terrible option, but the kick.
He shouldn't do it. If you're the full
No,
forward,
exactly.
Yeah,
if you're
Hawk
full
should
forward and
have-
you're in 50, you have a shot if you take the mark.
Exactly.
There's no
It's just-
unless there's a bloke in the all by himself with not anybody else, 50 metres away. If they sneak down and his opponent's on the 50, that's a bit different. But you just take the shot. Just own. You're one of the leaders of the team. Settle down and settle the team and just kick the goal yourself.
Exactly right.
Wear it and own this shot yourself. That's what you're paid to do. Like, I appreciate when blokes are unselfish and it can be a great thing. Like Gregson against Hawthorn, when he intercepted that ball, didn't blaze away, passed it off, hit Lang up in the square. Stuff like that, fantastic. But if you take a mark and you can kick the goal, you should kick the goal.
That's the key thing there. I'm not sure exactly where was he when he passed the ball. He was just outside 50.
He was inside 50.
I thought he was.
Yeah, he was well inside. Yeah.
Well, if he's inside 50, there's no doubt. I haven't looked back at it, but I think it gets back to you should know what sort of chance you are to kick the goal. If you think that you kick it 7 out of 10 times, then go back and kick it.
Let's be honest, Hawk, we all know 50 is not a problem for him. If he's in the 50, he can make the distance. So, you're the leader of the forward line, you go back and set the example.
Is he?
Well, he should be.
Well,
Actually.
He's one of the vice-captains. He's one of the more experienced in that area of the ground in particular.
Well, if he's not, who is?
That's right, yes.
Well, he doesn't seem to direct traffic very well, from what I've seen.
He's too busy just wrestling with his opponent most of the time. I suppose, what else? CatStorm, what was your... I suppose, what was your biggest issue with the weekend? I suppose, where we lost the game, how did you see that unfolding?
I think what we have is a general lack of just midfield pace. It didn't affect us much against Hawthorn because generally, you look at Lewis, Mitchell, Hodge, they're not fast players. But when we were exposed to the GWS midfield, and they've got players like Shield, like Scully, like Griffin, and they've got toe, we weren't able to actually keep up with them. They were too fast for us. And that's why in the fourth quarter, when they started to fatigue and slow down, that I believe that we started coming back at them.
So I suppose at Catempire, you were at the game, would see a different perspective of that. But it seemed like they just outworked us. Their mids just seemed to be streaming down the ground and running in numbers. And Tom Scully he was phenomenal, the amount of ground he was covering. I don't know if that was it the speed of the spread? Was it work rate? Where did they get us?
Yeah, I remember last year in a lot of games, it was the midfield spread that killed us and the speed or the relative speed of the opposition against us that hurt us. There was one game I went to in Adelaide where that was just so evident that we didn't set up properly, and then once the opposition got the ball, they were far too explosive. I didn't really see that against GWS, but I agree with you that they were working harder, and guys like Griffin and Scully was excellent, I thought. Probably the best game I've ever seen him play. Toby Green as well.
It's been pretty good both weeks, Scully.
Yeah.
He's good against Melbourne too.
That's
why I sort of thought that we might actually, cover his run a bit. They use him so much, to whether you run with him for a little while just to make sure he doesn't get, because he just runs and runs and gets possession, runs and runs and gets possession. And he sort of plays like, Shagger Burns used to, just keeps running and gets into space. He mightn't always kill you with that possession, but he's always there. It always continues the link. So
I think the only issue with that is that we'd have to put blitz on him because I don't know if anyone else could actually run with him.
Yeah,
he does have a very good tank, doesn't he?
That's what I was thinking, to at least try it. You might have even got a mismatch, trying to run with him and then kick it to him, because he would have outmarked him, that's for sure. But I don't think our coach is thinking like that at the moment.
I think the point about the speed, another point of it is I think it ties in with the work rate. If you're not setting up as quickly or working as hard, that extra speed can obviously help them exposed us a lot more, because they just, once they got out, they just seemed to be.
They were going on and on and on in the broadcast, and I'm like, Brereton's a bit annoying, especially when he's
a bit.
Hawthorn, then GWS, one after the other.
And then anti-Geelong, so it was a perfect storm for it.
But the speed coming out of the back line that they were talking about it, like whether it's getting blocked and we couldn't run off or whatever else, and that's what it appeared to me is like Enright was the one that was getting the ball out, especially late when they sort of, again, a bit like CatStorm mentioned, whether they tired or whatever, but we started to get some flow in the last quarter, and we got chances from that. Whereas earlier, especially in the second or third, they had us sort of blocked up, and whether that's because we're too tall or not mobile or whatever the reason, we seemed to be sort of getting cramped. We didn't really get a lot of run. Did you see it like that, CU? At the ground?
Yeah, definitely not enough run. People who know my posting know that I'm not a big fan of the attributing too much to pace of players, and
that's right, yeah,
and height. I think it's more how you play, and I don't think anyone would have levelled at us the week prior that we were too slow or we looked slow, and that's because of the way we moved the ball, and it's the way you set up. And we did it well against Hawthorn, and we didn't against GWS. Same 22 players, was it? I think it was.
Yep.
And it's just the way you set up and the way you move the ball. GWS did a good job of taking the game up to Geelong and playing it on their terms.
I reckon as well, late in the game when we made a bit of a charge, part of that was also, I felt Mackie and Enright really stepped up that last quarter and gave us a hell of a lot of drive through the back half, and I don't know if we were playing a bit safe earlier or what it was, but they seemed to be streaming through the middle of the ground through the defensive 50 and launching sort of attack after attack, and I don't know if it was just those two picked up or potentially it was just a combination of everything. If it was the GWS mids dropping off a bit, which probably would be happening with the new interchange cap and everything, allowed them that extra bit of space, and then their that little bit of freedom. Obviously, they're good enough players to take advantage of it. That was a thought that I had in that last quarter in particular, and I thought as well. Obviously, I was a big rap for Stanley's game. I thought he played I thought he was probably up until halftime. He was nearly our best player. Just his ability to take the game on, I was really impressed with. Just the way he gets the ball, and obviously as a ruckman, I'm pretty sure I saw him running away from one of the GWS midfielders at one point. Just tucked it under his arm, looked and ran off, and he was a target when he was forward. He took a couple of grabs and he looked good, but Mumford killed us. That was, for me, that's where our biggest problem was. Mumford had a very good game, or a very influential game. Just his crash.
He killed a couple of us.
His crash and bash, but his pressure and his crash and bash. And I think when he's playing that type of game, it helps the GWS midfielders walk that bit taller.
Oh, well. For sure. Yeah, I think last year it was obvious when Mumford got injured and he was out of the side. They really dropped off, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think if Mumford got injured this week and they bring in Simpson, it's not going to give him the same sort of effect.
No,
a bit like
quite.
Poor old Dorse.
Poor old Dorse. At least he can train his dogs. And I suppose that it leads to another discussion and another issue which has popped up. And obviously, Mumford's steamrolling Mitch Duncan, who I believe they've just managed to get his body out of the ground that he was buried in Mounaka. So hopefully he's back and right for Sunday. But what personally, I didn't have an issue with the bump. But what has given you a lot of work, Catempire, to a lot of moving of posts has occurred, and quite a discussion has come from it, and it would be remiss of us not to touch on it. And CatStorm's prepared for this, so
yes, he is.
The floor is yours, mate. What were your thoughts on it? Well, I know your stance on it, but go
nuts.
Yes,
well, first off, I'll start off with the legality of the hit. I mean, so we've got here in the laws of the game, I haven't got the point here, 15.4.5, prohibited contact and payment of free kicks. So there's a bit of preamble, but then it gets to this part. A player makes prohibited contact with an opposition player if the player, A, makes contact or attempts to make contact with any part of their body with an opposition player in a manner likely to cause injury. 1, above the shoulders, including the top of the shoulders. Right there. We're done now. Any part of the body. So whether you say he hit his head with his chest or his shoulder, it really doesn't matter. The law is very, very clear. There is no room for debate there.
So that's a kick, though, isn't it? Free kick, CatStorm.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
That's not talking about whether he should be reported for it.
Well, that's where you come into it. If it's a free kick, you're saying it's an illegal action, correct?
That's right, yep.
So if it's an illegal action that causes an injury, which obviously it did because he went off and didn't come back on, so he was concussed, well, then you have to decide if it is or it isn't reportable. So as far as I see it, if it's an illegal act, which by the rules it clearly is, and it caused massive injury, well, maybe not massive, that could be a bit of an exaggeration, but it definitely caused injury, then I feel it has to be reportable.
So at the time, your initial what were your initial thoughts? Did you think straight away that's too high, that should be a free kick? That's because I first saw it, my first thoughts were, Jesus, that's a big hit. Play on. I wouldn't have even... If one of our blokes, if Tom Hawkins had done that to one of their midfielders, I would have been dirty if a free kick had been paid against him.
I wouldn't.
And I would be filthy if he'd been reported. And I've played not a high level of footy, but I've played footy. Accidents happen. Someone runs into you, they get you a touch high. It doesn't necessarily mean... It sounds, I know by the letter of the law, it may be a free kick, but in the heat of the moment, when the umpire, you've got half a second to see, people can get hit high, and what other option does Mumford have? I know people have said
he saw it coming.
Yeah, he tackled him. He wrapped his arms around him.
What he should have done was the old school WWE edge move and speared him.
Well, but I mean, he would have literally cut him in half.
but that would have been illegal.
Where do you stand, CE?
Yes.
Look, if it was a free kick, it would have been a bloody good get by the umpire, given how fast it happened. And I think just watching it live, I just thought that's a massive tackle, and he's just got him. He's got him properly. I can see that technically it might be a free kick because he did get him high, and you can see that on the replay. But I think there is attack throughout the game where players get taken high, and it's play on. It's not a discrete incident where you can say, yeah, there was something there where the player got high. In terms of whether it's a report, I think I just can't see it. I think it's normal for supporters to react in the way some of the supporters have reacted because one of our players got knocked out, and that's fair enough. But the difficulty here is that Mumford tackled him, and it's a legitimate part of the game to do that. If he turned his body and put his shoulder through him, then we all would take a different view. But the only thing that's causing us to question this is because of the focus on head contact by the AFL recently, and the concussion issues, which is absolutely appropriate for the AFL to take that approach. But there's certain contact that's going to occur in the game that is just unavoidable by the nature of the game that we play and we love. It's just going to happen, and you have to accept it.
That's probably what I was trying to say, but worded much better. I agree. If he'd turned his shoulder at the last minute and drilled him, we would have been up in arms. But the fact that he met him, just wrapped his arms around him, I find it just hard to. I just thought it was a good tackle. I'd love to see our guys tackle with that intent and do that. But
to me, it was just play on.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't unhappy with play on.
I mean that to me, if I got kicked the ball, I'd be more spewy at the guy that kicked me and set me up than the bloke who tackled me, because the ball hung, and when you look at it, he just got into his hands as Mumford's arriving. So Mumford could see the players coming, obviously, right? And he didn't line him up. He didn't turn around and sort of like square him up and go through like a train. He's basically tackled him front on. Now, that he's hit him at a fair degree of velocity, and the weight. I mean, Mumford's as heavy as you just about get now, The days of Mick Nolan are well gone. So at that velocity and at that weight, it was like a steam train or whatever you want to take it on a mini minor. But that to my way of thinking is, if we start adjudicating because guys are big, heavy guys and other guys are small and we've got to take care of them, and where does it stop?
It stops when you don't hit them in the head.
Yeah, but
the trouble with rules, the trouble with when we start looking at the technicality of the rules, is that every week we've got rules that are 15 metres, and the umpire adjudicates, and the way that he designates, that's a 25 metres, not 15 metres. So, where does the way that he's looking at the rules come in compared to the way they're written? And to me, that was just a body hit mostly. And if he got up and his head was wide open and it was like Ablett on Bardsley all those years ago, Mumford would have gone for 6 or 8 weeks for sure. But he wasn't.
I think they're different types of rules, though. One's about the way the game looks, and the other is more about player safety and concern for the player. I mean, we've just had the incident up in Brisbane where, a 22-year-old kid is never going to be able to play football again, gets lost driving to university because he's been hit in the head too hard.
And where did that happen? That was a training incident. So
it wasn't just the training incident, it's repeated concussions.
I believe it was just a training incident that he had. I mean, it was no different than probably Ablett. Bartel got whacked by Hodge round 1, wasn't it?
I don't think anyone's disputing the seriousness of concussion and the dangers, obviously, that face the players, and how we don't want repeat concussions and all of that. I think when you watch the footage, when I watch the footage of it, I still struggle to see him getting hit that high. When he hit him front on, he slid up a touch. That's different to when someone out and out hits a bloke in the head, as far as I can see it. And I understand, but I mean, you can't protect against every single incident as well. There's going to be things that slip through. They don't.
So I sort of related to like a few years ago. I can still visualise what Grinter did to Terry Wallace, and you're talking about like full on elbows right to the face and stuff. Like you can see the teeth spitting out. Like this is nowhere near that.
But I think it's hard as well. Obviously, different generations seeing different.
That's right.
Different acts, and you have different expectations based on what you grew up with, what you saw back what you've seen in the past, and you can't really compare that to how the game is officiated and how it's run at the moment.
Well, I think that's the thing, is like a lot of that stuff's gone because of the way that we adjudicate it, and it's good. That's good. Who wants king hits? We don't want king hits in the game.
Yeah.
But do we really want to take out all heavy body contact? Because like a hip and shoulder is almost gone now. Like you can't hip and shoulder like you used to, because the accidental clash of if you just ride up a little bit too high and touch him in the head, you're going to go. Now this was almost just a front-on tackle. That's the way I saw it anyway.
No, that's fair. I can see where you're coming from. It's more about, with me, the inconsistency of the AFL on the ruling.
Oh, yeah.
They've made it very, very clear the head is absolutely sacrosanct. You cannot touch the head.
I think if we probably are holding a bit too much hope if we're expecting the AFL to be consistent on most things with the way they officiate and make a lot of rulings. Let's be honest, there. As much as they preach consistency, we only need to look at the match review findings from the last however many years to say that the consistency is probably something we haven't had a great deal of.
I got a quick question for you guys. If it comes out, say, tomorrow, which it won't, that Mitch Duncan broke his jaw in that tackle, is it still okay?
I wouldn't have a problem with it still.
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue, really. I think it's what was the act by Mumford. It was a tackle. He was trying to legitimately execute a part of the game. And unless we're going to say that there's an onus on the player laying the tackle to go softer than he has to in order to protect the head, which is that might be an option open to the AFL to do that. I hope they don't, but it might be open to them. Unless they do that, then what he did was a legitimate part of the game. The consequences, be that a concussion or a broken jaw, I don't think are the issue.
It certainly is an interesting discussion, though, and I'm happily surprised. I've been surprised, but happily surprised that it has popped up at least, because when I saw it, I didn't think there was an issue, and now it's interesting to see, and it's probably what BigFooty is really all about. This type of thing where you've got the different opinions and people putting their case forward, and I'm happy to be reading a discussion like this as opposed to page 375 of the Chris Scott thread. Now, we've also had, looking forward, it's time for us to look forward. We've got Brisbane this week, Sunday, the worst possible time frame for a game. Sunday twilight, 4:40 in Geelong, our first home game. We have today announced that Tom Ruggles has been elevated to the senior list. Do we think that, I suppose, what do we think of that decision, and do we think that is, basically saying that he will be, are we expecting him to be selected this Sunday? Turbo?
Look, I think, as we might have briefly talked about, I don't think in the past we've always consistently played the rookie that's been elevated, but I think we might this time, whether it's because he's a local boy and it's convenient to do it, like have the debut this week, or whether they just really want to reshuffle the back line and have a slightly different setup, or move Guthrie more into the middle. Not sure, but I think they might. Watching the VFL practice game the other day, I think Ruggles really can see that he's a Nousey type player. Like the rest of them, there are some guys there that are really just sort of struggling to play at that level, whereas he really used his body well, and he could get himself into position, hits targets most of the time, even though he's certainly not a Duncan or a Thurlow when he kicks the ball, but he gets it to where he's aiming. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays this week.
For who?
For who? Good question.
Yeah,
are we expecting changes for this week?
Well, I'm hoping they'll actually drop Lonigan for Ruggles, because I think we're far too tall on the back line.
Do you think Lonigan deserves to be dropped? Or is it more just a horses for courses and he's the...
I think it is Lonigan going to be at the club next year?
No.
I think that's what it comes down to at this point. Is he going to be there next year? Is he that much better than the next best person in his position that we play him now instead of Henderson?
It's an interesting discussion. I've seen it mentioned a few times this week on the board that people saying to drop Lonergan. It's not something I'd actually really considered, so I don't know. I haven't put enough thought into it to
well, I think it would have.
I wouldn't do it at this stage.
It would probably have
Personally,
Lonergan or Mack.
Sorry.
Those are really the only two options, because I think we're fairly set with Kolajasny back there. We want to keep him in the team because we see a lot of potential there. Harry Taylor's not getting dropped, and I just don't see us getting rid of Henderson after we've given up a first-round pick for him. And I know is he worth it, even though we've paid for him, that we should keep playing him, but I can't see us dropping him.
It's an interesting one when you compare it with the pick we gave up for him versus output, and people say, oh, we won't drop him because we paid this, but I mean, as much as what we paid is what we paid, that's in the past, and it should be getting picked on what he's doing at the moment. If he's not playing well enough, then he gets dropped. That's the way I'd look at it, but that's probably not the way the powers that be potentially look at it either.
Just back on the GWS thing, one thing I noticed, and this stuck out with me, it was a mark that Patton took 20 metres out from goal. Now our back line is just, it's tall. We have Taylor, we've got Lonergan, and we've got Henderson, and yet he took a one-on-one contested mark against Mackie. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it happened.
How did that match up eventuate? And it wasn't even, I don't even think it was super quick ball movement that just caught it out. It was a slow stoppage set up and a long kick in from a free kick or from a mark out on the flank, wasn't it?
It was, exactly.
I remember that exact thing, and I thought, and there was other words in there, did Mackie end up on him?
Yep, I was thinking the exact same thing. Look, I'm just going back to Ruggles. I'm glad that we're at least seeing he's in the mix. I actually thought we might see him from round one after his pre-season. I thought he showed plenty, and he's just the type of player we need. Not so much, I don't think, to replace at all, because I think my views are well known on that, but Geelong likes to play the tall back line, and I can't see that changing. I don't think we've seen anything in the first two rounds that suggests that needs to be revisited, or at least that the club would revisit it. But I do think another one of my pets is Guthrie playing in the back line. At the moment, I think we can see that the match committee are just torn. They know they need him back there, but they really want to have him in the midfield, and they keep pushing him into the midfield when they get the opportunity. And if we uncover a player who can spend more time, a small medium who can spend more time back there and hold down a position, that releases Guthrie to play more time in the midfield, which can only be a good thing, I think. And let's hope Ruggles is able to do that.
Have we considered maybe playing Caddy more forward? When I've seen him play, whenever he goes forward, he seems very dangerous. He seems a tough matchup for the opposition. So maybe if we move Caddy forward, that opens up for Guthrie to move more into the midfield.
I've many times mentioned on the board that I see Caddy as a very natural forward, and he's one of those players. He knows where to go to get the footy when he's forward. He leads well, which sounds like just a throwaway comment, but a lot of blokes don't know how to lead properly, I reckon, from when you watch properly. And Caddy knows how to lead. He'll lead, he'll repeat lead, he'll double back, he'll throw a zigzag in, and he knows how to lose his man and get to the right spot. So I would happily see him spend a fair bit of time forward, but I think that he would be doing that anyway as part of his rotations, as opposed to going to the bench. He'd be rotating forward. I think most of our midfielders would find themselves rotating forward, except for maybe Guthrie, who obviously would rotate back, and it seems to be Bartel still is floating around the back line a little bit.
But then he'll pop up forward too. He just seems to be going almost wherever he feels like.
Yes, he's been playing pretty well. I've been reasonably happy with Bartel's start to the year.
I thought Bartel's third quarter was very, very, very good. I think he tried to do what he did 5 or 6 years ago, and he tried to go in harder to try and lift the team. And it didn't work like it used to because he's not quite the same player he was. But he was if you remember, he was going in like a manic person, just crazy, diving into contests, going head on against the flow, trying to that intercept he got. And then
he did have one really. There was a contest in the centre square, I think, where he just threw himself through it. Just old school Jimmy just came out the other side of a really heated contest. So I haven't been. I think there's been obviously talk about Jimmy as well, but I think so far I've had no issue with him being in the team. It's probably worth looking at a player who most of us at the moment seem to have an issue with being in the team or holding his spot in the team. What do we think is going to happen with none other than Shane Kirsten? He apparently had a job on Gibson and did a fantastic job, so the coaches and the other players said against Josh Gibson on Monday he was probably as ineffectual as a player as we've seen on Sunday. So is it as simple as Kirsten out Menzel in this week, Turbo? Or is there more to it, or which way do you see it going?
I'm probably... It depends on the balance of what you do with Ruggles. My way of thinking is because I'm not totally in line with CE about our height, so I think I'd be more likely to think about moving a player out of the back line and rejigging that a bit. But if we talk about Kirsten, I think almost he's had 2 weeks to try to do something, and he hasn't done a lot, but when he's done something, you think, oh, geez, that's good. Now, finish it, and he doesn't. So I think he's almost run out of patience for me. I don't know whether he's run out of patience for the match committee, though. That's the thing. For me, I think it's just about time. You bring Menzel in. If Kirsten is the one that has to go to bring Menzel in, then you do it.
CE, what changes are you looking at this weekend?
I just think Kirsten for Menzel just has to happen now. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the job he did on Gibson, and I don't really care for the discussion. I thought it wasn't really. I think it's distracting from the main issue, which is that if Menzel's fit, he's in the team. There's just no arguments about that. And so the fact that he wasn't in the team and he was playing VFL points to the fact that the match committee thought he needed the run in the VFL, and as it turns out, they thought he needed 2 runs in the VFL. But I just can't see now how he's not ready to play, and I just can't see who else he could replace. Kirsten hasn't kicked a goal now in something like 10 matches.
Six matches, I think.
6 matches.
That might
and
be
he's playing.
What's worse is he's had chances.
He's had chances. He's playing as a forward now. You can do a defensive job as much as you want, but the best defensive forwards still kick goals.
But someone his size needs to be kicking goals. Like, he's not your small... Like, I could handle Jordan Murdoch not kicking a goal if he was playing as a defensive forward with his attributes. But Kirsten's almost second or third key forward size. He needs to be getting on the scoreboard at his size, because otherwise I just think you're using a key position-esque type player in a defensive forward role doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then I suppose I've just inadvertently mentioned another player. I wonder where we see Mr. Murdoch at, how we're seeing him tracking along at the moment. CatStorm?
Well, it's funny you mention that, actually, because height-wise, there's only a centimetre between Kirsten and Murdoch.
Yeah, I thought of that as I said it, because he's tall. He's tall, but he's not. They don't play the same.
No, definitely.
The same height, if that makes sense.
Wouldn't be much between him and Menzel either, would there?
I think Menzel's a bit shorter, isn't he, in the 186 range?
Oh no, I think he's taller than that. I would have thought, anyway.
They play to different sizes, though.
188.
There you go. So
I don't think unless we're getting rid of Murder for, say, Cockatoo, I could see that. But otherwise, he's one of the few players in our team that has any sort of genuine pace. And I know he's been ineffectual, but then every now and again he does something, and you go, "Oh, wait a second! If he could do that
every week, we'd love him."
Or more often, you think, "Wow, he could be something else," but he doesn't, and he just seems to be some sort of ghosting ability where he can just disappear, and you don't even know he's there anymore. It's a bit worrying.
He does go missing for far too long during games, and I'm not sure. Have we worked out what role he's actually playing at the moment? Because I genuinely have no idea.
I don't think the team knows. At one point, they were trying to play him as a rebounding backman, but he's not really accountable enough. He could do the job of getting it out, but when he's on a play, he seems to get a bit torched. They tried him up forward, but he doesn't seem to be able to get the ball, if you will, and I don't know what it is.
He's a bit too reactive as well, I find. I found on the weekend watching, he just seems... I don't know if he's not quite up to reading the play properly, or if he just can't see it unfolding, but he seems to wait to see where the ball's going and then he takes off for it. But obviously at the top level, a lot of the better players know where the ball's going before the ball goes there, and that step advantage is what makes them good players, where he's always playing catch up because he's not able to read the play at that level. I don't know if I'm just seeing something that's not there, but that was an impression I got from watching him on the weekend.
I think he needs to work on his tackle pressure too, because he only had two tackles on the weekend, and he should be closing people down, applying pressure to them.
Absolutely. CE?
I've probably given up trying to work out what the match committee is trying to do with him. I thought he's shown the most promise when he plays forward of centre and close to goal. I think he has a knack of hitting the scoreboard. And I think that comes down to what you touched on, Willo, that he can overthink things when he's playing behind the ball and he has to make decisions about what to do with the ball or where to run. I think he's a bit more instinctive inside 50, and he just has a knack of getting on the end of it and kicking goals. And I think if we're going to use him, that should be the role we use him in.
It does seem to be a more natural role for him. I think I've said before, I think where he doesn't have to think, where he can just see ball, get ball, and kick a goal if he's within range. And I reckon that goal he kicked against the Pies last year was just Exhibit A of exactly everything about that, where he just...
Absolutely.
It was just pure instinct, and it was a remarkable goal, which... How he never won Goal of the Year was an absolute joke. He beat half a dozen of them, basically, and then snapped it from 50. It was just extraordinary, but...
I kind of view that goal to be similar to the one Hawkins kicked on the weekend. It's never going to happen again.
Yeah, but there was probably, I'd say, a bit more luck in Hawkins than Murdoch's that particular night. Hawk just threw his hoof at it and just flushed it, like hitting a nice drive off the tee. But
I reckon he could try that the rest of his career and never do it.
Never get close to doing it again.
Yeah.
No, that's right. So we played the Lions this week, who, they scored 100 points against West Coast, but they lost by 10 goals still. So I don't know if that says more about West Coast defence or about Brisbane's ability to score. They went down to North by about 5 or 6 goals Saturday twilight. Where do you see us beating them to win the game, basically?
Well, I hope they've got a few outs too, haven't they?
Yeah,
so,
I think Rockcliffe is not playing, and Rich is in
Adam.
out.
Robinson?
Yeah,
Robinson didn't play last week, so it'll be interesting.
I think he might be coming back in.
Yep.
I think we've played two fairly upper-end sides. If we've got the midfield and the ruck set up to really do what we're hoping to do, then it should show this week. We should actually start to rip it out of the centre and score a bit more frequently from that centre break and really hurt them because their midfield power's down.
Yep.
So I think anything less than 6 or 8 goals win, you'd be sort of starting to ask questions. We should do at least that.
You would hope so, definitely. I mean, Brisbane, with all due respect to them, are not what I'd call a good side at this point in time. On our home deck, I'm feeling I want something more around the 10-goal range, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we went back of recent times how often we've really belted sides. It's been a while.
Oh, we've done it to a few of the lower teams. I think we got Brisbane last year.
Did we?
I'm pretty sure we got hold of them last year. Maybe it was the year before, but we've...
Yeah, it just feels like, it's been a while since we've really kept going. We do 5-6 goal quarter and then sort of ease off or just make it work till next week. But we're starting to get a young enough side now that they should be able to run the game right out. And if we're good enough, go right over the top of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, your thoughts?
There's not much more to add, really. They're clearly struggling, Brisbane, and to lose two of their better midfielders for this game, we should really have no excuse to give them a pretty big hiding, I'd say. Brisbane, I think, have lost by 10 goals plenty of times in the last 12 months and fielding better sides than they'll field this week, so and possibly playing worse sides than they'll play this week. So I think we should hopefully go to town on them.
I think they do have they have a reasonable midfield, but they've got pretty average key defenders as a whole. Like, they've got Merritt, who's handy, and they've got pretty average key forwards. I mean, they've got... Well, let's be honest. If Walker was still on our list, he probably wouldn't be in the side at the moment. And they've got a second, third gamer in Jackie. So, realistically...
Who is a talent?
He absolutely is a talent, but he's a third gamer.
But he's just young, yeah.
Yeah, so we should absolutely have their measure in, key backs, key forwards. And
midfield.
And midfield, that's right. So I would hope for a 10-goal win. That's what I'm hopefully looking for. I don't know what the weather's like. Hopefully that's not going to play too big a part in it, but it's the old thing. If we're fair dinkum side this year, we should beat them by 10 goals.
Yeah, well, the good teams, and you can see it historically, they finish the opposition off. They belt a few teams every year.
These are the type of games that are important come the later part of the year, when you don't want to... If you get a chance to belt a team and get yourself some percentage, you need to take it. You don't want to be looking back, ruining the game where you went to sleep after half time and just meandered along, and that costs you, a spot in the 4 or a spot in the 8 or whatever it may be potentially by percentage.
I guess the byproduct we could get from a big game playing against a lower opposition is perhaps a few of our out-of-form players finding a bit of touch. One would be, the obvious one for me would be Motlop, who I don't think has been as terrible as some people have said. He's had patches of games that have been okay, but he clearly hasn't been at the top of his game. And I think sometimes he relishes playing against these sides where he can have a bit more freedom, and we might just see Stephen Motlop turn it on a bit this weekend and find some form, which would be really great running into some harder games in the middle of the season.
Yep, absolutely. And he seems to be a confidence player too, that if he gets a run on against the lower team, it can sort of feed him and fuel him on to bigger and better things against the better teams.
Well, we have 2 games in a row here. We've got Brisbane and Essendon, and we should be absolutely annihilating both of them, really. So that should build us back up. We're 3-1. Then into who we got on round 5?
I know round 6.
Port Adelaide, I think.
Yeah,
Port Adelaide away.
We've got Gold Coast on a Saturday night in Geelong after that.
Yeah, so we've got two what should be easy games. So if we could build some confidence into that away game against Port, that would be very useful.
Yep, absolutely. I think that just about wraps it up for us this fortnight's episode, gentlemen. As always, is there anything that anybody has to advertise or would like to say before we sign off?
No, that's all for me.
No, I had something, and I thought of something I was going to say at this point during the day, and I've just got no idea what it is anymore. So I can assure you it was probably good, but till next time it'll have to be. CatStorm, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed yourself for your first run at it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Turbo, again, thank you very much, mate.
Yep, not a problem.
And Catempire, thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Guys requested the sub vest for the next one as well. So the next
someone tag me in. Someone.
I think we might have a spot available for the next one, but I'm pretty sure we might have a couple of people lined up already to go. But I may have one spot free. So anybody interested in being involved, let me know, and I also need to thank Daz for putting his hand up again, but I just couldn't willingly, knowingly let him get up at 3 a.m. his time on a school night again without it being absolutely necessary. So thanks, Daz. We miss you, but I hope you're tucked up in bed. That's all. We'll be back probably before that Port game, I'd say.
Hopefully with good news.
Hopefully with a couple of big wins under our belt.
Go Cats. Well done, Willo.
Thanks very much, all. Till next time.
Thanks all.